There's a house up on the hill. It's weather beaten. The vines have taken it over. The townsfolk tell us that is a haunted house because something really bad happened there a long, long, long time ago. Mary Price was the most beautiful girl in school. She was smart and she liked cars. All the boys had asked her out, but she only had her eyes, her big brown eyes, for Chuck Yarwood. Now, Chuck Yarwood was also a good-looking chap and smart, and he also liked cars. So when he asked Mary to go steady, she said yes, because it was a match made in heaven. Since age 14, they were inseparable. They went to all the parties, all the dances, all the events, the cinemas, everywhere. They were always together. They were inseparable. In their senior year, they were crowned king and queen of the prom. And after high school, they both got jobs. Chuck went to work at the local factory and Mary at the general store. Now, Chuck would pick her up at the end of the day from the general store. But one day, with his hard-earned money, he bought Mary's favorite car, a bright red Model T Ford, that he drove all the way to the general store at the end of the day. And he surprised Mary. And oh, she was happy, and she got into the car. And as soon as she got into the car, on the front seat, or the driver's seat, he got on his knees and asked her to marry him by showing her a big, broad gold ring. And Mary said yes. And in time, they got married, and they continued to be happy and work hard. And in time, they became managers of their respective workplaces. And they bought that big house up in the hill. It was a 3-story house. On the first floor, there was a living room, there was a dining room, and a well-equipped kitchen. On the second floor, there were guest rooms, there was a studio, and there was a library. And on the third floor, there was Chuck and Mary's bedroom with 2 big walk-in closets. Oh, they were happy in that house. They were very happy and comfortable. Now, Mary and Chuck didn't have children, but they were generous to all the kids in town, so much so that they called them Ma and Pa Yarwood. Every time they came down in their bright red Model T Ford, everybody gathered around them because they just loved them. And even when they retired and they became pensioners, they continued to look after the children. They always made sure they had enough food in their home, enough school supplies, and enough clothes, proper clothes for the winter time. Now, Ma and Pa Yarwood celebrated their 50th wedding anniversary in town, and everybody came, and it was a big party, and they were so happy. But tragedy struck the Yarwoods. Pa Yarwood had a heart attack, and he died. And Ma Yarwood was left in grief and sadness. Think just about her sweetheart and how this had happened to her. Now, the people from the town will go to her home to take care of her, and she always left her door unlocked just because she just loved them coming in. 2 boys, John and Daniel, they decided that they'll take care of her as if she was their own grandmother. She often heard them say, "We take care of our own in this town. We take care of our own." Now one day, this guy named Cyrus came into town. Came out of nowhere. He was a bit of a shady character that asked too many questions. Now, my Yarwood was a dignified woman, and she was determined, and she was fiercely independent, and she would drive in that bright red Model T Ford into town to do her own groceries. And when she came into town that one day, that Cyrus guy was hanging out with a youth outside the general store. And everybody gathered around the car and said hello to her. "Hello, Mama, hello, Mama." And she said, "Yes, my children, how are you today?" And she went to the store. Now Cyrus sized her up and down, and he noticed that big, broad gold ring in her finger. And he asked the youth, "Who's that old lady?" And they said, "Oh yeah, that's Ma Yarwood. She's like her granny, you know. Poor Ma, she lost her husband. She lives alone in the house up on the hill." Immediately Cyrus started thinking how he was going to get up to that house to get some valuables and maybe even more. So he said, this is going to be a good night for me. And that night, he took a taxi to the edge of town and walked to the path that led to the big house up on the hill. It was pitch black. Couldn't see a thing, but he had a flashlight that lit the path that took him all the way up to my Yarwood's home. When he got there, he was ready to force the door open, but the door was unlocked. So he went in. Very quietly, he went into the first floor, and he went to the living room, and he opened every drawer, but he found nothing. And then he went into the dining room looking for china, fine china or silver cutlery, but he found nothing. He was getting angry. He went to the second floor, and he looked behind the paintings on the wall. And he pushed the walls thinking maybe there's a secret door that leads to a room where all the valuables would be. But he found nothing. He found nothing. He found nothing. And he got angry because he found nothing. And so he decided, I'm gonna go to the third floor, and then I'm gonna get that big, broad gold ring from her finger. And so quietly he went up the stairs, and he pushed the door open, and he creaked, and this woke up my Yarwood. "Who's there? What do you want?" "Shut up, you old hag. Just shut up and stay where you are." And he charged towards the bed. But my Yarwood, as a dignified and determined woman as she was, she got up and she charged against him. He grabbed her arms and he said, "You old hag, give me that ring. Shut up and just give me that ring," he said again. But my Yarwood kicked him in the legs, and he fell down, and she jumped on him, and she punched her, and she pulled his hair, and he punched her again, and she scratched his face. But Cyrus, being young and stronger than her, overpowered her and grabbed her by the neck. And he said, "You old hag, give me that gold ring." But she wouldn't. And he squeezed again, and he said, "You old hag, give me that gold." And she didn't. And he squeezed, and he squeezed, and he squeezed some more, until my Yarwood was blue in the face and lifeless. He threw her to the ground, took that ring out of her finger, and just as he was leaving, he noticed those big brown eyes of my Yarwood staring at him. This spooked him, and he ran down the stairs as fast as he could, and down that path as fast as he could, onto the road, where he flagged a taxi, and he went in the back seat, and they drove away. And there he was consumed in his own anger in the back seat. So much so that he didn't even hear the taxi driver say to him, oh my, look, there's an old lady late at night, walking down the road. In this town, we take care of our own, you know? So he stopped and he said, Granny, where are you going? And with her face and her head, she gestured towards the town. Get in, he said. So the old lady got into the back seat. And then Cyrus felt that she was getting closer to him. And she was getting closer. And when she got really close to him, he looked at her, and immediately he recognized those big brown eyes. And he tried to push her, but the lady jumped him and took the gold ring out of his hand. And he jumped out of the car, and an oncoming car ran him over and killed him instantly. The driver pushed on the brakes, the wheels screeched, he got out, the neighbors got out because of the noise, the police were called, and this is the account that the taxi driver gave to the police. This young man got into my taxi, and then there's this older lady, you know, we take care of our own, she was walking late at night, and so she came in. I really don't know what happened in the back, but the guy jumped and he was run over by a bright red Model T Ford that vanished into the night. Now, the lady too, the lady disappeared and she vanished. Now, John and David got a little bit worried because they haven't heard from their granny, Ma Yarwood, for a couple of days. So they decided to go up to the house. And when they got there, their hearts stopped when they saw that the first floor had been ransacked. Worried, they went up to the second floor, and it was more worry because it was ransacked as well. And then when they got to the third floor, there was a foul smell. And they walked into the room and they saw Ma Yarwood on the floor there, rigid and cold and dead. They called the police, the priest, and the doctor. And before Ma Yarwood was taken to be given a proper burial, the doctor pried open her rigid, cold hand, and in there was the broad, big gold ring that Pa Yarwood had planted in her finger more than 50 years ago. Thank you.